Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Contract Warrior podcast. Today we're going to talk about why this podcast exists and how you're going to benefit for the future episodes. I'm your host, Christopher Williams, and I am a former contracting officer of 17 years with NAVFAC. And I will tell you, my background is diverse. It's cradle to grave contracting, architect engineering, construction contracts, service contracts, sole sources, IDIQs, source selection, you name it, and then also claims and REAs. So I have a diverse background, and I can absolutely answer some of the questions that you may have when it comes to federal contracting and also the future, right? Namely, the future of federal construction and what's going to happen, especially as the government changes so many regulations. If you want to ask questions or you want to engage, absolutely head over to contractorko.com and put in your information right there. I will certainly get a hold of it and perhaps use that question or comment in future episodes. In addition, if you have a desire to communicate with your contracting officer better or just to understand how your contracting officer thinks, I put a training together that's free for you, absolutely a gift from me to you, titled Think Like Your KO, and you can get that at thinklikeyourko.com. There's a lot of pearls in there. Please let me know your thoughts on that training because it's worth it if you just find one or two gold nuggets that you can use to save lots of money and lots of time in federal contracting. With that said, let's move on to the episode. So first and foremost, I want to identify the format of this podcast. Okay, so first it's going to be short series type podcast episodes. This would allow people to maybe consolidate all of the episodes related to REAs or all the episodes related to claims or, post-award submittals, whatever the title is. But having short podcast episodes will absolutely be the goal. Quick, direct, with some real life examples and easy to digest for everybody and anybody. In addition, I just want to say that this podcast is first and foremost in support of the Warfighter. I too am a warfighter once upon a time, just like many of you. I served the military. I was in the Marine Corps from 94 to 2003. And being a warfighter is a lifelong journey. And you know what? We all are continuing to support the warfighter. If you're listening to this podcast in particular, you're definitely interested in federal contracting or federal construction. And as a warfighter, look, the podcast is titled Contract Warrior. And the reason is because those warriors out there that are hustling contracts and hustling the work and getting it together under those restraints of funding restrictions and time, the clock is ticking, submitting proposals, trying to execute change orders, trying to execute modifications, creating jobs in America, keeping it rolling, right? There's a bit of a warrior aspect to it in the sense of the grind, right? Trying to keep this humming along. There are so many challenges on the federal side and on the contractor side. The federal side, you have challenges with systems not working or new policies being incorporated, this risk approach that the KO is trying to manage. Then you have the contractor side where they're definitely looking to make a profit because they can stay home and make no money. I mean, why would they do it if they're not making profit? And then they have logistical nightmares, right? The Buy American Act or some kind of new policy from some sort of administration or congressional thing that absolutely takes the rug out from underneath them, or some kind of labor law, or you name it, that interrupts their ability to support the warfighter as a private federal contractor. How is this both of these ecosystems going to unite to support the warfighter? The admin staff that supports that, whether you're a contracting officer, construction manager, or engineer tech, or whatever it is on the federal side, or on the contractor side, you're the CEO, you're the project manager, program manager, whatever, quality control manager, safety, all the folks, the subcontractors, right? The subcontractors that often get left behind. All of this is part and parcel with this warrior drumbeat to try to get these contracts executed because it's an opportunity to not only support the warfighter, but to create jobs in America. That's what it boils down to. And this is what happens, right? This is how it rolls. And it's great. It's great to be part of this. Now, I just retired. I retired after 17 years. And this is the new turn in my career, is to give back to the contractor community. Now, this isn't meant to be a biased podcast where federal contractors are untouchable. Absolutely not. It'll be absolutely transparent. Everything I say will have full transparency in the sense of federal contractors, there are knuckleheads, right? And then there are very diligent contractors. There's opportunistic contractors. There's contractors of different pedigree, different levels, different aggression. I know this because my career has been mainly in the field offices. And I've been at least at 4 different field offices and interacted with different levels of contractors. And I can tell you, everybody needs training. Not that I have all the answers, but that there's just not enough common sense type training. Same with the federal side. The federal side is just, they put themselves in a box. It's by proxy because of the policies, and everything is just really almost self-injury in that sense. And the contracting officer is trying to navigate the ship and then trying to communicate with the contractor. So there's this whole paradigm going on here just to get this contract awarded and executed. And this is what our podcast is supposed to do, is provide value to help stitch it together. There is a natural gap that exists because of profit and nonprofit. And that gap should be filled in with education, right? And that's the goal. The goal is to be part of that discussion in order to kind of close the gap. There's a lot to cover. There's a lot to talk about. So there's a lot of episodes that will be coming up. And so the Contract Warrior podcast is basically the mouthpiece of Defense Contract Shield and Defense Contract Coach. Those two brands come together. Defense Contract Shield is for advisory, one-on-one execution. Defense Contract Coach is for training. And this podcast serves as a mouthpiece for both brands so that in a uniform fashion, this information can be delivered to you, right? Whether you are a warfighter, whether you are a federal, contracting officer, or some commander trying to figure it out, like what do I do with submittals? Or if you're a contract specialist trying to figure out how do I navigate DAU, how do I get things done? Hey, what is the contractor, what does that mean when the contractor thinks that they own all the float in the schedule? If you're a contract specialist, that might be a new issue where post-award issues are new to you or pre-award issues are new to you. And vice versa, if you're a contractor, you might think, wow, what in the world is taking the government so long to get through stuff, right? The future episodes will help shed some light on those issues and bring it together, right? Try to clarify. And so that is the goal. And then ultimately, in the end, that should foster some decent work-life balance so that there isn't such a mystery, which I absolutely experienced as a contracting officer, and constantly, those who have worked with me, I've constantly trained or constantly talked about this in order to invest in you, right? Or ask you to help me help you, because simply there is this breakdown and not enough information or not enough care to care about the information that's available. So our goal is not to be everything to everybody, but to provide some content and context to hopefully bridge that gap, right? And then help the warfighter move forward in the mission that's in front of them. Because we don't need the warfighter to worry about why you can't get steel on site, or why something is being delivered that isn't in accordance with the Buy American Act. Or we don't need the warfighter to worry about why we didn't get any funding to award this contract. We need to handle that internally and then communicate at our own level and not affect the warfighter. The goal is to support the warfighter, right? So a lot of us have common ground, and I know this because I've worked close with contractors and I've worked with a lot of government people. So there is some common ground. And our goal is to bring that common ground to light, right? So in closing, just to reiterate that there is free training available to you at thinklikeyourko.com. Head over there, check it out. It's free. It's right there. It's available. If you have feedback or you have things you want me to talk about in particular, just head over to contractorko.com and submit your information. So this concludes the very first episode of the Contract Warrior podcast. Thanks for your time, and we'll see you later.